Hockey, yeah.
My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
Welcome into Judd's Hockey Show. Judd and AJ, quick edition here, coming off what I think is a very interesting game. Disheartening in some ways, but not as much as you might think. 6-1 loss to the Colorado Avalanche for the Wild on Thursday night, on the heels of a comeback 6-4 win over the Blues on Tuesday. Wild now on the road Saturday, going to San Jose Age, and then on Sunday playing the Golden Knights back here next Wednesday against Connor McDavid and the Oilers. So let's start off with the bad, okay?
Okay.
Because the bad is obviously this. This team is decimated. Brodin's out now because he blocked the Colton Parayko shot on Tuesday night. So he's got something with his foot. He's day-to-day, but in hockey, who knows what that means. Faber took an elbow, it turned out, early in the first period from Jake Neighbors of St. Louis. Now, he left the game. He tried to come back and play, and we didn't know he was hurt. So it was a very innocuous sequence, and then he skates to the bench, goes up the tunnel, and does not come back. Well, turns out I don't think it takes a genius to say he was concussed. So he's out. Spurgeon still out. Kaprizov out. Lauko still out, which is, okay, he's a third or fourth line guy. But the point is, defensively, last night, I get to the X. Let's see if I can find it here. So I pick up, here it is, the handy-dandy lineup sheet, okay? The line combinations. Okay. I want to go through the defensive pairings for you. Now, you saw this, so it's not going to surprise you. First defensive pairing last night, Jake Middleton, Zach Bogosian. Bogosian, ideally a number 3 pairing, is a top pairing guy. Second pairing, Declan Chisholm, who unfortunately had a terrible turnover on a misguided pass. And Travis Dermott, who has been, for the most part, a scratch since being picked up off waivers from the Oilers. And then the third pairing, John Merrill and David Jiricek, making his debut with the Wild, all 6'4", 204 pounds of him. So that to me, and John Hines' age, I don't know if you saw his post game or not, but John Hines' post game comments were, hey, look, we didn't capitalize. Neither team had a ton of great chances. It's not like the Avs poured on the grade A's. The Wild was actually in this game for quite some time. Mm-hmm. To their credit, Hines and his players, who were given every chance to say, we don't have our guys, resisted that, which I respected. And Hines' point was, I didn't think we played as bad as the score reflects. But what was your takeaway? Because in this case, like ordinarily, with what Hines said post-game, I would do the big-time eye roll and be like, no, you played like crap. But I think the circumstances are so unique here, and it's not like the Avs poured it on. There is something I'm concerned about I'll get to, but what was your takeaway from that game?
Honestly, I'm going to agree with John Hines. And if he's not going to say it, I'll say it. And I know we don't like to make excuses and give excuses for this team on this show, but last night I think I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here. When you're missing as many guys as you had, they actually, I think, besides some very costly defensive blunders and questionable goaltending in net,
yeah, I was going to bring that up.
I really think that they played a pretty solid game. I think it's very apparent that the message was we need to capitalize on high quality chances. So they didn't shoot the puck a lot. There was a point, I want to say late in the second period, where I was watching the game with my mom and she goes, 6 shots. There's no way that's right. And it was like 7 minutes to go in the second. I was like, no, they just haven't shot the puck that much.
Right.
They were trying to make that extra pass. And I want to say, based on like the heat map and the charts and stuff like that, where their chances eventually came from, usually when you look at the Wild, it's kind of scattered around the perimeter, top of the zone. They don't work to the middle and right out front like a lot of teams do to them a lot of the nights. The Wild tried and attempted to do that to the Avalanche last night. The problem is, I think they did 99% of the work, just couldn't finish on a lot of the really good chances. Because they did, when they got to the front, they had high chance opportunities. The problem is they didn't have the finishing. And when on the other side, the Avalanche just overpowered them. It was a 3-goal, I want to say third period. I want to take that out of the equation because I think for the most part, the Wild actually passed the eye test offensively, but it was a bad change initially. on, I want to say, the Ross Colton goal. It
Yes.
was a terrible, terrible blunder by Declan Chisholm to, hey, here's a free lunch for you right out front of Filip Gustavsson.
That was a terrible pass. He fanned the pass, but the idea of the pass was terrible.
Yes, and yeah.
Like,
and
what are you doing with that pass, dude? Take that to the perimeter.
And that's where the top half of your defenders being out, I think, costs you, because those are a little more apparent. I think, and I want to say Declan Chisholm, I've said this the past couple shows, I think he's been playing some pretty solid hockey over the last month or so.
Yeah.
Last night, maybe not his best effort, and you're going to see that when guys like him, Bogosian, Merrill have to have more ice time. But for the most part, I do think that you can give them the benefit of the doubt that they did look better than the score line probably does reflect.
Bad games by skaters. Let's just do this quick, because I think it's funny too, because plus minus can be a deceiving stat at times, but I think in this case it's pretty clear. Matt Boldy, A-4. He was not good last night.
He was not.
And that top line was just off, because let's see here. So Boldy, a -4, Rossi, a -3, Zuccarello, a -3. So the first line did not play well. That's unfortunate. Hartman also was a -3, and as he said post game, after losing the game to his brother, Jake Middleton said I was horse bleep, and he was a -4. So those are bad games by skaters, but again, I have a hard time being worked up about that because of the circumstances. But I do want to get into a couple of subjects here, and one does concern me. And I don't know if this is a real concern or this is just a blip concern. You tell me. Filip Gustavsson has given up 10 goals in the past 2 games. And now, Marc-Andre Fleury was sick last night. There was question about if he could even come to the arena to dress as the backup. And my guy, Connor Beaupre, who is the practice goaltender and one of 2 E-Bugs. And by the way, both E-Bugs, because of the circumstances, were in the press box last night. Connor was prepared to be the backup, I guess, and shout out to him. Didn't happen. Flower came and dressed, stood in the tunnel. I think he was probably puking, and Gustafsson had to play. But the game against the Blues on Tuesday, he gave up, in that case, Gus, 4 goals. Fleury comes in and plays great. There were goals last night where there were definite screens. So I'm not saying that Filip Gustavsson is responsible for all 6 goals. I also am a little bit concerned about the regression, though. That's a lot of goals in parts of 2 games, not even 2 full games. And I definitely saw some shots, I think, in these past 2 games, including the Blues, that could have been stopped. Short-term concern, or do you agree with me that that's at least worth pausing for and reacting to?
I'm going to react to it for sure. First off, I do want to know what sort of illness Marc-Andre Fleury is suffering, because if it's like a contagious flu,
it's a
you're
flu
already
that's going through the team. Zuccarello and Gaudreau had it. I wonder if it's past the point of contagious, because I did think the same thing.
At that point, I mean, I don't care if they've scored 10 on Gustafsson. I'd rather have Beaupre on the bench, possibly in the
played
game.
for the North Stars. Yeah,
exactly.
Donnie
Why not?
Beaupre made several great years for the North Stars.
I trust him, and frankly, given the state of your roster, the state of your lineup,
I thought this too.
A lot of people hate the term like scheduled loss, just kind of laying one down for the team. But if there's a night to do it, it's probably last night. You're missing so many crucial guys. Your backup goaltender is vomiting on the bench down the tunnel.
That's my
Why
concern.
not? Who cares?
Or had the
And plus-
runs, which would really suck to have goaltender equipment on.
Oh my God. What Canadian goaltender what was it when they had the traditional classic thing, the Heritage Classic, and it was Vancouver. They had the white breezers. It was a bad look. I know it wasn't Luongo, but it was Corey Schneider? Doesn't matter. I'm gonna say I am somewhat concerned. I think it's somewhere in the middle of a short-term, long-term type thing though for Gustafsson, because he's played so well. I think I do want to give him the benefit and like the courtesy of he's going to have a week or 2 at some point this season where it's just not going to look great.
Yep.
Maybe given the circumstances, maybe he's not feeling all that well himself either. We don't officially know. They do tend to hold some information at times, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen. But you're exactly right. Some of the goals over the past couple of games here have been a little like, how haven't you stopped that?
The Blues game concerns me more because at least last night we can point to Spurgeon, Brodin, and Faber being out. The Blues game, Brodin and Faber weren't out, and there were at least a couple of those goals that were sort of sketchy. If that's the right word.
And my main concern there is we've talked about this too, especially him coming in. We know goalies are kind of head cases at sometimes. We discussed Jesper Wallstedt and his kind of inner battles and confidence issues that he's dealt with here over the past calendar season. But Filip Gustavsson, I mean, we know what he had last year. He came in a completely different mindset goaltender this year. We have not really seen him take this tumble of back-to-back games. You're getting yanked, and then, hey, we're going to go back to you. And all of a sudden, his six get past you, even though it's a pretty depleted lineup. I'm curious when he does get the nod the next time around, just how good or bad he looks. And I think that's going to be very telling because I can see 1, 2, maybe even 3 games, depending on the opponent, given circumstances. But if this is 4, 5, then we really need to have a serious conversation. But I'm right now, I'm tentative to say panic button, blah, blah, blah. It's just, I want to keep an eye on it. It makes me a little nervous, but I'm not full on panic.
Well, if Flower is still sick, then I think there's a very good chance that Gus is going to get the start against the Sharks on Saturday, right?
You think so?
And the Sharks, by the way, are not nearly as horse crap as they were. And Macklin Celebrini's a treat to watch. They've got some nice young talent there. So that game will be a test. But it's incredible. So the Wild last night, the reason why our guy Connor was darn near their backup goaltender was unbeknownst. I don't think that this had been reported. Jesper Wallstedt couldn't be recalled because he's hurt, which I didn't know until yesterday. I don't know if that's something that you had heard or read.
No,
he's missed the last 5 games because of injury.
I was unaware of that, but why was there not?
I don't know.
That's interesting. I thought it was a money deal, and I know they had signed another
Dylan Ferguson
Ferguson
2-way deal. He couldn't be recalled because the previous night playing goal for the Iowa Wild, he got hurt, and then the one goaltender that they have that they wanted to recall, they couldn't because he makes too much money, and you can't fit him in under the cap. So that was the conundrum.
Salary cap just ruins everything.
The Wallstedt thing intrigues me. I wonder what's wrong, and I hope it's not. I mean, he needs to play.
Yeah.
It feels like it's just been a really weird year there. Like the one thing from Gus, more so Gus playing so well than Fleury, but it's a situation is the fact that Wallstedt's been up here, he's been down, he's played a game, he expressed all of his issues. So I would like to see him get some normalcy back to his season, and it feels like Wallstedt's season has been anything but normal.
And I'm looking at this CBS Sports report here. It's an undisclosed injury for Jesper Wallstedt, so they're not really. We're not even getting we're not even getting upper, upper lower. It's literally just he's injured. He can't play.
That's a good point.
That raises a little bit of an alarm in my mind, but I don't know how much we necessarily need to look into because sometimes it could be it could potentially a personal thing. Would they label it an injury if it's like a mental illness
type of,
or like a personal, maybe maybe a close family member is having a health issue and he needs to step away.
I think they tell you.
They would, yeah.
I don't know. It feels a little bit odd. Don't want to speculate there.
Yeah.
But they basically are the injury bug runs all the way down to their American Hockey League team.
What about the Iowa Heartlanders? Are they hurt? Are they injured? Can they technically call up whoever their goaltender is?
They got a nice building. We should check that team out. They've got they're right down by the college there. They're right down by Cedar Rapids, just past there.
Oh, I didn't know that's where they were.
And right near it's I think it's between, if I'm not mistaken, Iowa City and Cedar Rapids.
Okay.
Yeah, well, the Heartlanders are hot. What did you think of the debut of David Jiricek?
I thought it was very room temp. I did see, I think, some good things. I did like how he looked confident at times carrying the puck low into the zone. And that, granted, that's what he's known for. That's his game. Yeah. I like the size because he did body off a couple of oncoming checks. So I think the advertisement is there. You saw what is there, but also he looked a little uneasy. And that, granted, I think he probably wasn't expecting a call up. He's only been with the organization for a handful of weeks now. It's his first game with the new club. And granted, he probably got more ice time than they would like to have given him, just given all the health stuff. So I'm not going to say like, wow, they really hammered this one out of the park. What a deal for the Wild. But I'm also not going to say, wow, what a bust. They got scammed, blah, blah, blah. It was a nice little sampler, but I'm not dying to see more right now.
Well, and I think that's the key. I think they are not dying to see more as well. My assessment after watching him is this: you can see what they love, right? Mm-hmm. Like that size, he can definitely create a little bit. But you can also 100% now see that trade was in no way, shape, or form made for 2024-25. This is a 2025-26 trade. And I think best case, and this is asking a lot, but it is a trade that was made for when Spurgeon, like to move him up to the top when Spurgeon retires. Now, that's not to say that he won't be one of their 6 defensemen at the start of next season, but it is to say I think we saw exactly what they saw as far as potential goes, AJ, and I also think we saw exactly what the trepidation is in doing this. And I don't think that they would have made this move unless they were absolutely forced to, which they were. But I would very much expect that David Jiricek is going to be spending as much of the rest of the season as possible playing for the Iowa Wild, and we'll probably see you in training camp.
Yeah, and that's setting up for the future of a probably Faber Buium.
Oh, talk to me.
Let's see, Faber Buium,
Middleton.
And then it's going to be Middleton, Brodin. I'm in this mind space. I am saying Spurgeon is probably retired or gone. So Brodin, Middleton, and then you're going to have Kivi Haru and unnamed veteran. Oh, Jiricek.
Jiricek.
Perfect. And then your Johnny Merrill has been replaced with some unnamed 33-year-old veteran defenseman who is on a 1-year deal.
And
as a seventh.
Bogosian's gone too at that point. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do you think Zeev and Faber pair together?
I think. You know what? That's going to be fun to watch.
Zeev with Middleton and Brodin back with Fabes. I mean, you really can't go wrong. First world problems here.
This is about as good of a problem to have as it can be. I think it's just
in my
mind.
Guy, so.
It gets me excited to see it.
Oh God, yeah.
Just because the talent is there, and I do think offensively Zeev probably complements where maybe Brock can lack at times, and on the other side of there, Brock can cover defensively where Zeev may lack at times. Okay. I just think, given the handedness, how they could potentially pair off each other, they both are very good on their feet and can recover. They're going to be smooth. That is going to be a premier defensive pairing in the league when it eventually gets some time to work and click.
So you're saying Faber sort of plays the Brodin role to Zeev to cover for Buium.
Yes, but I think he's going to be able to scale back how defensive he maybe has to think. Because I think Zeev, like, we've seen Brodin essentially at times cover in his career for Matt Dumba, who defensively was and could be a liability majorly at times. I think it's going to be maybe half that level because Zeev can play defense, but the offensive prowess that he brings just excels and pushes the play.
Last question for you. How far do you think the Avs can go? Because their depth is somewhat questionable, but my God, when I look down on that 200 by 85 sheet of ice last night continually, and I see number 29, McKinnon, and on the back end, I see number 8, the great Cale Makar. I'm like, that talent level is so high. Now, 2 guys do not a team make, and I get that. And I don't think the Avs are, like, the Avs have talent outside of those 2, for sure. Mm-hmm. It might not go as deep as it once did. In fact, it doesn't. But how far do you think, like how much do you still, fear is probably too strong a word, how much do you still respect the damage that the Avs can do just based on some of the factors, which is 2 of the best players in the world?
I feel like you have to bring in and factor how their season has started, I feel like in the past, they've gotten to a point-wise where they can maybe take their foot off the gas. You know, McKinnon doesn't have to play 27 minutes every single night. We can kind of ease up and coast into that playoff matchup, whereas now they started so rough. They really didn't have any goaltending. Everybody essentially has gotten hurt for them at one point or another, similar to what the Wild are dealing with. Now they're getting healthier, but the problem is I think their depth isn't as strong as it has been in past years. So they're going to be fighting tooth and nail until that final day. And then you're going to go right into that playoff matchup. And if it's a healthy team they're going against, and the problem is here, and this was pointed out, I think yesterday, was the halfway marker of the season or something like that within this week. They said, hey, you know, here's the playoff matchups, and we're going to see, you know, Kings Oilers for the 8th year in a row in the first round and all, and, you know, Wild.
You're right.
It is what it is. We're seeing the same matchups. Fix the seeding for playoffs. But
the league
all
wants
of these
that.
But all of it's a unanimously agreed upon point, but Gary Bettman just refuses because they want these divisional rivalries, and like, no,
Right.
Gary, I want to see a little variety. I want to see. I don't need to see McDavid, you know, stomp
Right.
Quinton Byfield and Kevin Fiala for the 7th year in a row.
Right.
But I don't fear them as much. I think you got to respect that top line because those are some of the best players in the world at their position. Nathan McKinnon is a force. He is a power forward that's super skilled. He can drive a game altogether. That is a guy that's put up hundreds of points in his career. Mikko Rantanen, when he's healthy, those two work off. I'm not going to say it's like a budget secondary level type of McKinnon Draisaitl because you can't really compare anyone to McKinnon, or excuse me, anyone to McDavid. But McKinnon is just so good. Mikko Rantanen is so good. And then Cale Makar is a franchise defenseman. The problem is I don't like the rest of their lineup. Like Jonathan Drouin is not what he used to be. It really ever was. They're relying on Arturi Lehkonen. They're relying on Ross Colton, Casey Middlestead, who I actually like Casey Middlestead. I've liked him since he was in high school here in Minnesota, but he's
a stud here. And for the Gophers, he's not as good. He's not as good a pro as I expected.
I agree. Like he would dance around at the high school tournament. He would do the same thing with the Gophers, and there's a jump between that type of level in the NHL. But the rest of their lineup, especially goaltending, not that I don't like the tandem of Scott Wedgwood and Mackenzie Blackwood.
Yeah,
but that's not a. Granted, they won one with Darcy Kemper, so
and
I don't know what
Gorgiev
I'm
was
saying,
terrible. So he got traded to the Sharks. Like that's what I'm asking though. Like how much can that talent do? Can they win a round? Like I think they'll get in. I think they'll get in the playoffs. They're the first wild card in the West right now. They're tied in points with Dallas, who by the way, those two teams are only 3 points now behind the Wild, who have 56 points. So, see, that's how tight this whole thing is. But I find them really intriguing because 3-4 years back, they go get Nazem Kadri.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal. I mean, he's a great player, but then he leaves. So it's just it's an interesting situation. I will say this. I don't want Makar and McKinnon not in the playoffs as a hockey fan. I want them in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think their best hope is to get in against a team that's a little banged up at the end of the season. Like if the playoffs started today and the Wild had to face them, that's probably their dream matchup because they're going to be able to get a team that's kind of on their heels. They're struggling. They have all the talent to blow them out of the water if they're healthy. But right now, I don't like anybody past that top line for the Avalanche. But you do have to respect how good they are when those guys are on the ice.
I hear you. All right, we are done. Back soon, I'm sure, with, as we talked about, back-to-back games coming up out west this weekend for the Wild. I'm Judd. He's AJ. Talk to you soon.